Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking about this. This is the Varjo Aero VR headset, you guys. As you guys know, they just came down very significantly in price, and I'm going to give you guys my full walkthrough. Everything from the unboxing experience, configuration, my thoughts on it, feel from comfort to performance to configuration, any struggles that I had when setting it up. I've had it for about a month now. And we're also going to be talking to this in relationship to the RTX 4080. I do not have the 4090. So I have the more, I guess, consumer-based 4080 version versus the $2,000 graphics card. So we're going to be talking about everything from with this headset, with the 4080 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. So stick around. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkill's tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. All right, you guys. So again, we are going to be talking about this, the Varjo Aero, and we're going to be going through everything step by step, from unboxing to build quality to setup process, configuration, settings, not in the way that you think, but we're going to be talking about settings and what it took to get it up and running smoothly, and then my final thoughts of it. Now, I also, as you guys know, have the Pimax Crystal, which is absolutely, in my opinion, the Aero's competitor. I'm not going to necessarily be doing a comparison of the two today. Today we're just going to be talking about this one, but in about a week from now, I'm going to go back to using the Crystal. And then after a week of further use, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison, given the fact that the Crystal is actually a bit more expensive than the Aero now, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons to both. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First off, when it comes to Aero or Pimax, you guys, as far as the unboxing process goes, they're one and the same. They both are packaged beautifully. They both make you feel like you're opening up a Christmas present early, right? You know, so there's no concerns there when it comes to packaging. The packaging on both sides are absolutely fantastic. And I know I sort of compared there, but I just wanted to make it clear because I'm going to do the same thing when it comes time for the comparison. We're not really going to talk about packaging and shipping. They're both amazing. They're both very, very well done. No concerns whatsoever. And they're both, it's fun to unbox them. I'm not going to lie. Okay. So now let's talk about build quality. When it comes to build quality of the Varjo, this is probably the better, one of the better headsets that I've had. It feels very nice. Still got that same plastic feel that I think they all have. I don't know one that doesn't have it. I mean, it's plastic, right? But I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of people will talk about the plastic and flimsy feel of some VR headsets. My thing about that is, I think the other side of that coin is, do you expect to be tossing a VR headset around where it has to have durable material? I mean, anyone who's spending the price point on these headsets that they are at, I would hope is taking very good care of them and being gentle with them and setting them down, hanging them up when they're not in use, whatever it may be. Okay, so as far as the build quality goes, it's solid. Now, let's move on into comfort, because that's where things start to change. With comfort, they really did an amazing job with this. It is probably the most comfortable headset I've ever worn. It's just got all the right things in all of the right places. So I'll give you guys a quick demo here on how we put it on. I always loosen the back up a little bit. The nice thing is when you bring it down, the lens cover here at no point goes across your eyes. It just sort of falls down into place, so your eyes never touch the lenses. Now, I will say with someone with glasses, this could be a little weird. I'm not sure I actually own a pair of glasses, but I don't use them in VR. But you see, that becomes a little bit more tricky. So when it comes to glasses, that could be, I mean, if you pull it, set it, bring it in, there's definitely enough space between where your lenses would be and where the lenses of the HMD are. So that's not a concern. But when you set it in, tighten it up, this piece here, I'm talking a little bit louder because I don't know how well the mic's picking me up, me pointing my face down. This piece here is amazing. I don't know why, but you can also tighten it here. That's how you adjust your vertical elevation. And you guys can see it sinking. But it is just like right in the right spot. And then the back piece, hopefully you guys could see that. I don't know how well that showed. Sitting at the base, or I should say, yeah, base of your skull, top of your neck, is perfect. And it feels comfortable. They have this padding they have on it is phenomenal in all sides. So this is always really weird looking at a camera when you're trying to figure things out. But this here, the padding here, and the one up top are phenomenal. It is definitely the most comfortable VR headset I have ever worn, hands down. It's very, very comfortable. Other headsets producers would learn a lot from this particular design. This is flawless. It really is. Once you get it, once you set it to where you want it, man, you could wear this thing for hours and without any fatigue. Going to comfort, let's talk about weight. It's also very lightweight. It is very lightweight in comparison to other HMDs. You guys know which one I'm talking about. Much lighter, much lighter. And that's definitely appreciative. So I've probably got at any given point now, I don't know, easily 100 hours in this thing already. And again, that's in a month period. All the content that I do outside of VR, right? So it's all off screen, right? Except for some footage that you guys will see today. Get my hat back on. So I never got any neck fatigue. You guys know that crink you get back here in the neck, or maybe the next day where it's up here on your traps, after you've been, doing this for a long time with that forward weight. None of it. It is a very, very well balanced, very, very nice. And I guess I can't really say balanced. I think it's just light. It's supported right. This arch here and the way that allows you to distribute that weight in the back of your skull versus up on top or anything like that. And I will say this, most HMDs are designed to go back here. I've seen a lot of people wear it with the rear clamp up on the back of your head like this. You're not supposed to do that, okay? You want to get it down, okay? So that way it's supported under your head. And so that part, I've seen a lot of people wear these incorrectly. Okay, you want to wear them down low so that way it's supported by the base of your skull. Okay, and that does help a lot with any of them. But the overall design and comfort of this is phenomenal. I don't find any major sweat issues, and I'm a big boy Italian man, right? So I sweat, okay? And I don't have any really issues with that. I didn't find myself getting particularly hot inside the mask. So that was another very, very good plus. And other than that, I think that's the best thing about it there was the comfort and the lightweight. So now let's talk about some features that I really, really appreciate about this. All right, so now let's talk about the features of it that I really appreciate. And actually, we're going to talk about both. So obviously, the first step would be in the comfort. The features, the biggest feature that I enjoy is the way the headband is, and it's nothing crazy. It's just designed right. You've got multiple adjustment points that will change the angle. Okay, so rotating this will change this angle here. Okay, allow it to rotate up and down. Same thing with the other side, obviously. And yes, I'm fabulous. My daughter made that. Don't start with me. It does have audio. It comes with earbuds. Now, at first, I was very about the earbuds, and it still definitely is not my go-to. I would not That's not the route that I would prefer. I actually still prefer desktop speakers over headphones in general, even when in VR. But I will say this, it's not bad. It is a solution. The sound with the earbuds that they provide you is actually really nice. But you're not going to get that bass. You're not going to get the rumble. You're not going to get a lot of that three-dimensional sound that you can get from other audio sources such as headphones. But speaking of headphones, the nice thing about this particular headband, and this still, in my opinion, is a feature in the design, is with this kind of headband style is you can very easily put your gaming headphones on over these and not have any problem. And if you have gaming headphones with a 3.5 millimeter jack, you just plug them straight into that and you're good to go. Okay, you still get your audio and then you get that high quality sound. So I would definitely say that I still recommend a third-party audio source, whether it be desktop speakers, gaming headphones, whatever it may be. But I would definitely still recommend a different form of audio. Okay. Now, something this is more software, but it is a feature of the headset that I want to talk about is the automatic IPD tracking. When you put the headset on, the sensors inside the headset automatically determine the interpupillary distance, so the distance between the center of each eye. The reason why this is critical, you guys, for anybody who's in VR is it determines the sweet spot. Okay, so that's the first part, is the sweet spot automatically adjusts when you put the headset on. And then you have two options. Even if you put it on, it calibrates, good. If you lift up to look at your keyboard and you put it back on, there are two options here. Option one is it will recalibrate again. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that can get really annoying really fast. You don't realize how often you lift your headset up until you have to deal with that. Or option two is you can tell it to remember your previous calibration. So if you, all those times that you just sort of lift up and do it, chances are the IPD is right. But it is really nice when you're putting it back on for the first time after, on the next day's use, having it recalibrate again. It might have shifted a little bit. You might have turned a little bit. That is a plus. Okay. The other thing is the feature that I really like about it is the way the cable is. You guys can see how long it is. First off, very long cable, but it plugs into its power source and the the PC source plugs into this. So there is a box about that big sitting on top of my PC right now that the USB-C cable plugs into, and that powers on the headset. And everything runs through USB-C. And again, a very nice long cable. So you can really get some distance with it. Now, one of the things that brings me to another thing that I dislike about the headset right out of the gate is that if you do not unplug it after every use, the headset stays on. I accidentally left it on for almost 24 hours. Now, luckily it still works. I haven't had any issue, but I have heard of people in the past having a problem with the headset burning out essentially, or the lenses getting burned because they forgot to unplug it. So I don't like that. It should have a timeout or at least a manual power button, a way to turn it off. Now, if I'm missing that, then oops. But as far as I can tell, I haven't missed anything that gives you the option to turn the headset off. So again, if you decide to go with the Aero, after each use, make sure you unplug this cable from the PC. Okay. What is going on with my footage? It's starting to drive me nuts. Stop it. Anyway. So those are probably the big features. Oh, the other thing is the eye tracking. And again, this gets more on the software side of things, but not so much as configuration as it is a feature. So foveated rendering, right? Masking, not rendering everything to the full resolution that is not inside that sweet spot. So what I'm looking at through here is going to be nice and clear and pretty and easily legible. Everything outside of that isn't going to be rendered to the same high resolution. What that does is it saves GPU strength, gives you more overhead, and in theory gives you higher frame rates without necessarily killing the immersion. So what eye tracking does with foveated rendering is as I move my eyes, that sweet spot moves with it. Pretty sick. It works very, very well. Again, the competitor that we talked about before has that as well. I think this one still works a little better, but we'll get into that when we do the comparison video. They're close, okay? Both of them are on point. And then I would say the only other feature that I have been spoiled by that I have learned to dislike is the base station tracking. I really like the inside out tracking now. I've become really, really fond of it. And this is going to be, it is very much so obviously an issue that is based on environment and where you're playing, because I've heard people, again, with the competitor, mention that inside out tracking is terrible. It doesn't work. They have a hard time with it. And then people like myself who have had a flawless experience with it. So I think that's also going to depend on what your situation is and what kind of lighting you have, what kind of room we're talking about. I only operate on one base station. I do not use multiple. And I haven't had any issue tracking with this either. But that is something else to consider, is if you buy one of these, you must also buy a base station. Keep in mind, this thing is $9.99 right now. Okay. That's US. And a base station version 1, okay, I think is like right around 150 US. And version 2, which this will use both. I have discovered this will use both versions of the base station. Version 2, I think, is like 240. So the reason why I'm making it a point to toss that out now is because the competitor we talked about earlier is more expensive than this, but it has inside out tracking, thus making a base station not necessarily required. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so we've talked about the build quality, we've talked about unboxing, we've talked about some of the features. Let's talk about my experience with the software and configuration. Okay, and then we're going to start with a little disclaimer as we get into that. Let's get going. All right, so here is the software. This is the Varjo Base, is what this is called. And essentially, it has a ton of different options inside. You guys can enable the foveated rendering. This is where we were talking about the IPD configuration. You can set the pixel density, a couple of different variables. They do recommend leaving it at 35. However, if you're someone who has like a 4090, you can get away with going higher than that. But the software itself is fairly simple. This is actually a mirror view inside here, where my screen is overlapping, that allows you to see what the headset is seeing. I think if I actually move the headset around, maybe not. There really isn't much to look at there. But this is where you could also see exactly what the headset is seeing, and I believe you see it from the left eye, I believe is what we're watching. And it has its own ability to take screenshots, do recordings, show the pointers. You can set up your different menu buttons. It's got a couple of different options as far as the presentation. I'm just going to sort of skip through this, a lot of this stuff. Virtual desktop, if that's something you guys are interested in, it does work. It works very, very nicely. Just not really my forte. And then obviously your other configuration options as far as configuration, like things like OpenXR versus OpenVR, and a couple of other different startup configurations and things. And then obviously you have your support channels in regard to the service itself. And it looks like we actually have an update. So that's kind of cool too. So the software was really easy to get up and running. The one thing that I will say that came down to it with the Aero was finding that right balance between Microsoft Flight Simulator, OpenXR, and then I ran into a lot of issues where at random it would stop tracking, or I would switch Microsoft Flight Simulator into VR and the whole image would move. So if the cockpit is here, right, if I'm looking at the instrument panel, as we turn our head, right, I should see the door or something, right? But what was happening to me is that actually everything would move. And if you guys don't know, that actually makes you really sick very quickly. Give you guys a tip. If you run into that, the easiest way that I found to get through that, and it happens every single time, it's been 100% success rate. If you run into that, or if you find that you can't, zoom in and out by leaning forward, hold still, take your arm and just go like this in front of your headset. Okay. And what that will do is cause a break between the headset and the base station, cause it to sort of retrack itself. And it only happens on the initial switch into VR. I've never had it happen once I've got it working. Once it gets working, it just works. I haven't had any problems. Okay. So the software, as far as Varjo goes, was very easy. The base software requires matter of seconds, in my opinion, to set up. Getting into software configuration, it was everything after that got very, very difficult and challenging. My little trick with the base station took a while to figure out what the heck was happening. The other thing that I will tell you is, and again, please remember, this is why I will not talk about detailed settings, is because every machine is different. You can have two machines that are built exactly the same, exact same hardware, makers, versions, you name it, and have completely different experiences inside of them. Okay. So with that being said, one of my, let's get that out of the way. One of my bigger things in regard to Microsoft Flight Simulator that I did find was DirectX 12 versus DirectX 11. I personally found DirectX 11 seemed to work significantly better. I got a much smoother frame rate. I got a much higher frame rate, almost anywhere from 12 to 15 frames more on DX11 than in DX12 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I have not tried this yet in DCS World. That's going to be the next step in. So if you guys are DCS World pilots, it is coming. And we'll be taking a look at there and seeing what the difference is. I'm actually expecting a bit better results in DCS than what I got in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Personally, I believe that DCS is much more optimized, better optimized for VR than Microsoft Flight Simulator is. So keep that in mind. That is coming. But one of the things that I still deal with a lot, and you guys will see, actually, you may not see it. I didn't see it in the recording, but I can tell you that inside the headset, I was seeing a lot of stuttering as I would turn my head, and yet I'm rocking anywhere from 50 to 55 frames per second. I will give you guys a base to start with. If you are on the RTX 4080, start your VR settings with DLSS set to quality, depth as your reprojection, and start with high as far as these overall settings. Personally, I turn, actually, I can't remember if it's in VR or not. Depth of field and motion blur. I don't think motion blur is in VR, but I think depth of field is. I turn both those two off. I don't like the way they render in any simulator, but that's personal preference. I won't say that has a significant impact. Shadow maps, I believe, start out in high at 1526. I would recommend kicking those down a little bit and then work your way back up. Now, this is all done using OpenXR. I do not use Steam VR. I think Steam VR it had its time. It had a purpose. I think that purpose has pretty much come and gone. The problem with Steam VR is it's running so much other garbage in the background. It's doing so many other things, and it's not doing them particularly well. So I stay away from Steam VR. So keep that in mind as well. If you're a big Steam VR user, this is probably not the video for you to base your decision on. I think Steam VR crushes performance. I really do. It's definitely not optimized anymore. And it's crazy because it updates so frequently, and my personal experience is it never seems to get really any better. But again, to each their own. So this is with OpenXR. It works great with OpenXR but it took a long time to really dial in the settings. Right now, I have it set at, the resolution is set to 100%. I have everything else turned off. Okay. Because anything else outside of that, the fixed foveated rendering, motion compensation, turbo mode, again, overriding the resolution one direction or the other, all those are going to be independent upon your settings, your software, your hardware, how it interacts, blah, 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 blah. So those numbers aren't going to mean squat to you from me, because you could probably copy mine 1-to-1 and probably still get completely different results, as we talked about before. I will say that the getting it up and running smoothly, which I'm still struggling with. Like I said, at the time of this video, I'm still having some stutters. When I turn my head, sometimes it'll shake, and it's not VR stutters. It's not a lack of frame rate. I always keep the frame rate counter on. You guys won't be able to see it in the footage because I use the OpenXR frame counter, and so it only displays inside the headset, and I'm not using a VR mirror right now. So the footage you guys are going to see is basically a cropped image directly outside of the Microsoft Flight Simulator mirror. But I will tell you guys that at no point does it drop below 40. I think the 40 was the lowest it ever got. But there are times where I'll go to turn my head and it would get like shimmers almost. I don't even know if stuttering is the right word. If you guys are Varjo Aero users and you know what that is and you know what I'm talking about, please comment down below. Let me know what it is. CPU affinity is already set to high. So I don't think it's that, by the way, as far as the process affinity, excuse me, it's already set to high. So it's already, outside of normal. No idea what's causing that. I've still got to dive into that. But push that aside. And let's go ahead and jump into some live footage from the sim. And we'll talk about what my experiences were as we were flying. Stick around. All right, let me bump things up here a little bit where we start getting things moving. So the overall experience you guys are going to see in the recording, and actually I will tell you this, the recording is not doing justice to the fidelity of what I was seeing in the Aero. I actually find this recording to be a bit more pixelated than what I was actually seeing. So please keep that in mind as we get into this, because I don't want to deter from the quality that I am seeing in the Aero. The Aero is very, very clear. The colors, I will say, are nice, but in my personal opinion, they're comparable to just about any other current VR headset, minus the competitor. I'll just say it on this one. If you guys are wondering about color quality and image quality, the Crystal has it. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys that one right now. When it comes to color and visual fidelity, the Crystal wins it hands down by far. But the overall the clarity is still there. Okay, so the clarity is still absolutely phenomenal, and it's still important to remember that this particular headset is $300 cheaper, $400 cheaper actually, I think. So keep that in mind as well. But what I'm seeing, like I said, the pixelation that you guys are seeing here on the taxiway, I'm not seeing inside the headset. I don't know if that's just the way that it rendered out. Now, something I just thought about is I believe that in this particular video, my MSFS resolution is set to 4K, and so that's what the window was repeating at. Now, I'm going to give you guys a tip too here. I don't care what Microsoft says, and I'm just saying, just in case this comes up, not saying that anyone is saying it, the monitor settings absolutely impact VR. Hands down, there's no arguing about it anymore. And the reason why, how I discovered this is in testing last week, I was messing around with the 2D settings and I had it set to TAAA as my anti-aliasing instead of DLSS. In VR, obviously, I was using DLSS. I was having a horrible time getting the frame rate to lock in here. And so, out of just troubleshooting and giggles, I set my 2D settings to DLSS as well. So that way, the 2D settings matched the VR settings, both of them using DLSS at quality. And my frame rate issue went away. Okay, so there's definitely a connection there. I switched it back as a test, back 2D, back to TAA, and the frame rate took a dump again. So there is a connection, and this again is on DX11, just in case there's any connection there at all. I'm not a programmer. I'm not sure how those all two interact with each other, but there was definitely an interaction. Now, as we're flying through the sim here, I had a gorgeous climb out. I mean, it was just, everything was running beautifully smooth, just like you guys are seeing here on the screen. It was gorgeous. But actually, guys, it looks like you guys can see some of the little micro stuttering that I was seeing here. And it wasn't frame rate dip. I can't stress that enough. Whatever's causing it is not a drop in frames. I have a frame rate counter that's up on the screen this entire time that I was flying. It's literally right in front of my eyes. And it was stable. It was like I said, between 40, anywhere from 40 to 55 through the entire flight. Now, that's obviously not what everybody is looking for, but for flight simulation of this type, okay, I would not say that below 40 is good for anybody other than Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you're doing high-speed simulation, i.e. racing or DCS World where you're scraping the treetops at 700 knots, you'd notice it, right? But through this entire flight, the picture fidelity was clear as day. I could very easily make out anything that was on the ground. I actually think some of the stuttering that you might be seeing here in the recording, now that I'm looking at it further, may be worse than what I was actually seeing in the headset. And again, some of that is because of OBS, okay? And some of that is because of the Microsoft Flight Simulator mirror. So there's a couple different things that could be at play here. I think in my next video, we're going to try the OBS OpenXR mirror. They actually have their own mirror software designed specifically for this purpose. But I had a really good time flying with it outside of those micro stutters. Let's go ahead and move things forward a little bit. So here we're just flying over the Tucson area. And again, guys, pay attention to the side views because of the peripherals is usually where you'll see a lot of stuttering. Now, some of the things that we did talk about earlier that I do want to mention that could be some of the fuzziness that I'm seeing. Don't forget we talked about foveated rendering. Foveated rendering is on in the headset. And that, again, is keeping the sweet spot nice and clear and rendering the outside areas a little bit less quality. So that could also be causing a lot of what we're seeing here in the repeat. Guys, as you know on my channel, I have not done a lot of VR recording. I've done plenty of VR reviews, but I don't record often in VR. But honestly, this actually looks pretty good, all things considered. But you guys can see sort of up in here, if you look up in here, you can see sort of shimmering and things on occasion out in those outer areas. Up in close, again, looking at that sweet spot, like if you look at the wing looks absolutely beautiful. You can see sort of goofy shaking right here. That's not part of the plane. That shouldn't be happening. So that's some of the stuttering that I was talking about. That's odd though. Like you can see everything outside of that little shimmer there is working beautifully fine. And it was all the way through. By the way, you guys are going to see an absolutely terrible procedural landing here. But like, look out there. You guys can see the shimmers going on out there, right? A lot of weird artifacting out at a distance. So some of that, again, could be Microsoft Flight Simulator settings, but everything up close, I cannot stress enough, looked absolutely clear. Pop those speed brakes out. This is one of the things I love about the Mooney. And I picked the Mooney just because, by the way, guys, most of my testing, just so you guys are aware, was done in the TBM 850. So an aircraft that's still relatively new, probably not particularly VR optimized yet. I've also operated this in the SimWorks Studio PC-12, which isn't even released yet, so definitely not VR optimized yet, and had similar results. So it seems to be performing pretty equally no matter what aircraft that I fly. Okay, let's go ahead and get in closer because we're just about ready to wrap up here. But again, if you guys see that shimmering, sort of the flaking that's happening up over here, weird artifacts, I am seeing those in the headset and I can't figure out why. Now, with that being said, it's very likely, if I were to take a guess, DLSS. The reason why I'm sort of hung up on that is because I don't have that problem with the other headsets. For example, my 8KX or the Crystal. I wasn't having those artifacts. I wasn't seeing that. So I'm not sure if there's an issue there or if it has to do with the differences between the headsets and how they operate. Okay. Well, as we're touching down here, guys, I hope you guys have appreciated this review. I tried to be as thorough as I could and as honest as I could all the way across. This was provided to me for review, you guys. So everything that you've heard is my opinion and my thoughts alone. I don't know what I did here, but I absolutely lost control on that landing, didn't I? Anyways, I hope you guys have found it useful. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Aero down below. If you have any tips and tricks in regard to using it with the RTX 4080, please let me know. I would love to hear them. I obviously want to create the best experience possible and then share that experience with you guys. So please make sure that you add those comments down below. It would really help out a lot. As always, folks, stay safe and healthy. I'll see you in the next one.